Welcome to Public Space, a community dedicated to supporting individuals who have experienced religious trauma or find themselves in between and are looking for self-God as well as community. We exist beyond the four walls of colonized religion. Here, we create a safe and vibrant space where members can explore and share spirituality, stories, art, and intellectual inquiry through critical dialogue. Join us as we embark on a journey of healing, self-discovery, and creative expression. Together, we will foster a supportive community that empowers individuals to reclaim their voice, embrace their unique journeys, embody a Path-Maker Archetype, and find solace and strength in the company of like-minded individuals.
Greetings, Pathmakers, and welcome to Season 2. The trail is different, and what we're packing and what we're sharing this season is different as well. This season, we plan to have more engaging dialogues with individuals while off path. So enjoy the following dialogue, as it may inform you and add to your toolkit while you trek life beyond religion, especially colonized religion. See you out there.
All right, welcome back, Pathmakers. We are here today with a special guest, and today's guest comes from a place that we would consider off path, and she is definitely not on the main path, and she's doing amazing things off path in her own space, but she's also helping liberate other people in a very unique and creative way. So without further ado, please, Ren, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us about yourself and this amazing work that you do.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Excited to be here, excited to chat with you. I am an outdoor boudoir and erotic adventure photographer. I live in the Pacific Northwest at this point, but I was raised in the South. Chattanooga, Tennessee is where I hail from, which is a very different a very different place. It is the Bible Belt. It is good Christian upbringing. And yes, it was quite a journey to the West Coast to then become someone who is frolicking outdoors with little to no clothing on, encouraging so many people to do the same. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you could tell us a little bit, like, why did you get into this? Like, how did you get into this? How did it just stumble upon into your life, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely not a roadmap to from Christianity to boudoir photography. I don't think that is a typical route. I was very indoctrinated, and I was married someone in the church. I was a youth pastor. I was fully in a place of just like submitting my will to God and just constantly trying to seek like what is God's will for my life. And really, it there's so much. Somebody asked me once, like, what is religious dogma? Like, what does it really do? And I would say the biggest thing is just takes your power from you. I was never asking myself what I wanted for my life. I was never making my own calls. I was in a constant state of questioning and unsure of what I needed to do. And that left me feeling really unfulfilled. It also left me feeling really disappointed because God doesn't typically come breaking through the clouds and offering this specific plan. And so I was in just like this constant state of questioning myself and then thinking I would maybe understand God's will. And if it didn't work out, feeling really disappointed and frustrated because I couldn't have been in a more willing state to do just anything. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. And I think that Christianity in particular, from a young age, is grooming you to be in a constant state of just tell me what to do, because then you're a lot more easily guided and convinced to do horrible things or just lame things. um, so at a certain point, I just got so burnt out. It was just like everything came to a head. I had been in an incredibly submissive role with my husband who wasn't working, and I was working a ton, and just like everything just like came to a head. And I was like, I just need a break. I need a break from all of this. I need a break from God. I need a break from my husband. I need a break from this life. I'm just like putting everything on pause. Um, I had had some really profound experiences in a spiritual context. And so I did think that God was real. And so my situation was just like, God, I know you're real, but we're not talking right now. And it's like I blocked his number. um, and then I just started living for myself and just like whatever I wanted. And I was 24 years old. This is 10 years ago. And I suddenly didn't really believe like in morality anymore. I wasn't like really thinking that hell was real. And I just behaved however I wanted to. I did some absolutely inappropriate behavior with the impression that there were no consequences anymore. It turns out there are still consequences. It does still matter how you treat people. If you live an incredibly selfish life, you will burn relationships, burn bridges, ruin friendships. And I did that. But it was definitely this like pendulum swing of like I'd been in a constant state of like never knowing what I wanted. And then I was like, well, now I only do what I want, and I don't care if it affects you, and I don't care if you don't like it. I don't care if you think I'm whatever. And I moved to Italy. I came back and was just like, I describe that time as my life was a blank canvas and my only mediums were chaos and pain. And that just everywhere. And then looking back at it was like, okay, wait, this is not a good use of free will. We must reassess here. And so when I decided to move to the West Coast, and when I did that, I really like let it all kind of catch up with me and let this whole, I guess, the pain of losing a guiding light, the pain of misusing my own internal compass or allowing it to bulldoze over anyone else's light, and really reoriented to what it is that I would actually like to be, who it is that I would actually like to be, what does she do, who she hang out with, how does it feel? And I really spent a lot of time. I spent 2 weeks heading from Tennessee to the West Coast, and I really like reoriented during that time. And I didn't get it all right. I didn't just like immediately change. They think that change doesn't happen in an instant, but trajectory can happen in an instant. And so you can reorient your trajectory and know you don't fully change, but give it enough time and you start to see something different. So when I get to the West Coast, I start dating this guy who lives in a van, or he didn't live in a van. I convinced him. We end up living in a van, but he had a van and we would go camping a lot. And he was a musician who loved silent places and had a real knack for finding silent places. And so they're just really remote and no one's around. And we started spending so much time outdoors and naked outdoors. And it was this time where I just really felt myself like unraveling. So much of that shame, so much of this like idea of what my body should be, so much just like twisting from being perceived all the time, especially being perceived in a Christian context. And like I had crinkled up, and I was suddenly in this place where I could just unravel, and there was no expectation for anything other than to just be and feel the wind and listen to the silence and relish in the sunshine. And so around the same time, I got a camera and I started doing a lot of photos for bars and restaurants, but because I had been waiting tables, but I just really loved this experience that I was having. And I had an inclination to do boudoir photography just because I'm very like sensually, sexually oriented person. And I was like, oh, this could be really fun. And then just bringing it outdoors seemed to be the like natural step of things. Like I was already out there. I was finding these really remote places that were so beautiful. I was like, whoa, imagine a naked woman laying on this log. It would be perfection, And so I just, um, so it was just like a kind of one step after another, and not, it was certainly not like I'll be doing that now, but it just was, even the step of me creating so much pain and chaos in Tennessee was an important step to like recalibrate, to go from never wondering what it is that I wanted to like not caring what anyone else wanted. Even that was like a step along this journey. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. Wow. What a story. What a journey.
We're
Wow.
still on it.
Of course, of course, of course. Yeah, thank you for filling us in. It is starting to make a lot of sense now, like what you're doing and who you're becoming. And that's beautiful. I love hearing when people have experiences that lead them beyond the church. You know,
Hmm.
I don't have anything against the church, but it's just something interesting about having these existential crises, if you would, that cause
Hmm.
us to say, hold on, there's got to be more. This can't be it.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
Why? And that relationship or that wrestling with God that you went through, beautiful, right? Like how many of us can relate to that? Like, come on, God, you can't do me like this.
This can't be right.
Right, right. Something's got to
I be
be
reading
off
all these.
here.
I be reading all these Bible verses. I be hearing all these messages. But how
Yeah.
and for the response in the church when things aren't going your way is just, well, you're not listening, you're not in alignment, you're not. It's funny because now I would consider myself a very spiritual person, and I do lean to that. But I've even noticed, actually, like very recently, because I'm in a season of a lot of crossroads right now. Even still, no, I would like sharing this story right now. I'm like, wait, girl, are you back to doing that now? But just you think of God as a different thing, like outsourcing that power, and just kind of like just like checking in with myself of like, that was very deep wired into me to let go of my power like that. And no, it's not Christian God anymore. But where do you fall as far as like what do you call, how do you commune with this greater being?
That's so sweet. Thank you for asking. No one's asked that yet to me. But for me, I come from a lot of religious trauma background too. I was similarly brought up in New York
Mm,
and brought up as a practicing Christian, through my mom. As children, we don't really have a choice on what we
mhm,
believe. We just kind of inherit that baton of belief. And for me, a lot of it just was wrong. It was off. Similar to you, it just didn't fit in my body. It didn't feel comfortable. And
mm.
funny enough, when I got out the military, I decided to go to seminary some
Whoa.
years later. Yeah, I just felt called. I had this dream, and in this dream, I believed that God was in my dream and was talking to
Hmm.
me.
Whoa.
In my time of my life, I really wanted to get to know God more than what a pastor could tell me, more than what the church could tell me, and everyone around me knew what the church taught us, so I just kept getting this sense of this is regurgitated. This is recycled.
Mm,
You're not giving me an authentic answer. You don't really know. That's what that tells me. So for me, I was like, I got to figure this out for myself. I got to know. And so going to seminary was that bold
mm,
adventure into what are they talking about when they say this? What does this story mean beyond just the Sunday sermons? And for me, it empowered me, similar to you, giving me that power to look beyond traditional interpretations and
mhm,
interpret it for myself. What does
hmm.
Aaron think? You know, what do you think when you read this, Aaron? And for some time, my interpretations came out a lot different from what was preached. And with research, we started to see like, oh yeah, something was off, and our spirit like intuitively knew this. You got
Mhm.
to keep looking. And so I love when you say that making that distinction between Christian God and this wild outside God, right? For me,
Mhm.
God becomes a female because me personally, I had mother issues. So for me,
Mm.
God becomes that mother, that ultimate mother
Mm.
that comforts me and reassures me and is patient with me and nurturing. So for me, I privately prefer, the female aspect, or referring to God as this female spirit or archetype, but respect everybody's way of communing and connecting. I really don't try to argue with people because that's not what it's about. But you see that everyone comes to God in their own kind of way. Like you have figuring out
Mhm.
that God didn't really do that to you, but
Mhm.
people did, and people twisted the meanings and messed up the connection. And so these days I really try to be direct with God. There should be no
Mhm.
middleman. I like to
Mhm.
say,
one
someone
million
that I
percent
have
on that.
to rely on. Like, what do you think? What does God think? Like God, if God had a message for me, God would tell me directly. That's
Mm.
something I firmly believe. Like, people say, oh, I had a vision, I had a dream about. That's cool. But how much of that psychologically is a projection? If
Mhm.
God had a message for me, I'm sure God would have reached me. We're talking about the creator of everything. You don't think God could figure a way to communicate with me? God had to go to you to communicate with me. That just seems silly.
Whoa.
So, but going back to how you embrace the wilderness, loving that
Mm.
as an analogy. And you also mentioned you have this focus and interest in sex. And that's interesting too to me because, sexual energy is identical with creative energy. So,
Mhm.
saying that you have this energy in you that loves to express and live. If you could you tell us a little bit about your journey with that sort of energy and being creative and
Mm.
sexual and kind of merging them together to create what you've created, because it's a
Mm.
little different from the normal, right? Like average people feel awkward when it comes to talking about sex and sexuality and sensuality of the self. And it seems like you've gone somewhere in your own spiritual journey where you're not feeling that shame. You're not feeling that patriarchal disbelief or authority that says, we tell you what's sexy. It seems like you found
Mhm.
something that is like, uh, you know it's sexy, let them know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, it's funny because obviously in Christianity, as a good Christian girl, I was certainly not supposed to be having sex, thinking about sex, except for in the context of saving myself for my husband. My parents got me the I Kissed Dating Goodbye book. I had a purity ring. I definitely had premarital sex for sure. I always said like sex was my sin of choice. I never really was drawn much to drinking or to drugs or much of that, but I always was really drawn to sex from a very young age. My parents were pretty open with me. I think I was 10 when they told me like what sex was. From a very like they're like, "Listen, we know you're gonna run into kids and they're gonna try to tell you what this thing is. So we're gonna tell you first." So then I was the kid. It was like, "I'm gonna tell you. I found out." Such a troublemaker. I definitely, yeah. If you're into astrology at all, I have a stellium in Scorpio. So Scorpio is the house that rules sex and taboo and money and power. And my sun, my rising, my Mars, and my Pluto are all there. So I feel so yeah, your eyebrows just everything clocked, everything clocked. I I like that feeling. I like the feeling of being turned on. It doesn't have to be with a person. You can be turned on by your life. You should be turned on by your life. You should be turned on by what, like, by food, by your environment. Like, there is so much goodness here that we have so much control over making it reflect what gets us feeling like, and wanting to pursue it and wanting to be present for it. I think a lot of our spaces that have been like mass developed, or a lot of our clothes, or a lot, at this point, consumerism just has us producing at such a mass scale that it can't have all of the, details that get us excited to see them and like touch them and be present with them. So we can almost move through the world brain dead and sensory dead and primed for dopamine addiction because everything is, rather boring to look at, rather boring to participate in. And that's not true everywhere. I mean, there's lots of nooks of cities and neighborhoods that are really beautiful to look at, parts of the world, incredibly intentionally designed. But I lived in Hickson, Tennessee, like much to look at. It was just everything's box stores and really boring. And so I think just finding things that turned me on, finding ways to talk about things. I've always, even from a young age, I don't know if it's like a journey or if I just came out the womb with a passion to like, what kind of sex are you having? What kind of positions are you enjoying? Wait, like how many times do you come? Like, and I'll just like bring it up. I want to talk about it. I want us to be like really open about it, because I think that there's, in these taboos, there's so much like fear and despair and insecurity that you start talking with people and you're like, oh, wait, this is actually a more common experience than I thought. Or, oh, well, I remember just, just so many chats with people over the days, over the years. And then like, you come how many times? Like you didn't, and I was like, are you not like, you can use a vibrator while you're doing it and like, and really elevate your experience. So they're just like, what? And I'm like, what do you mean you're coming less than 8 times? Look, and people are just like dumbfounded that I would bring that up. And I'm like, why are you not bringing that up? Like I think there's something so weird about our puritanical background that I experienced so first-handedly, but our entire nation is experiencing the fact that we make sex this really big taboo thing that we're not supposed to talk about and not supposed to be open about. And yet we're using it to like sell things, and it's like so present, and we're creating this really like, like girls, like cover yourselves up. You need to be so covered. And it's like, okay, well then the men's are just out here like, oh man, I just need a taste. Okay, just like, let me see a little bit. And it's creating more like intensity of desire there, and more manipulation and contortion of it, and more like shame around it, because we're both not being open about the fact that we want it, acting like we don't want it, then secretly, subconsciously desiring it even more. And then it's subliminally like brought to us through all this like weird, like, why is it being used to sell me shoes? So yeah, I think I just came out the womb with a desire to get under the hood.
Yeah, you definitely thank you for sharing that. You definitely have a lot of Scorpio energy. And that's beautiful. Honestly, thank you. That's beautiful. Because it does make sense, right? What happens when purity culture through religion suppresses your natural state, who you are? God created you like this, like put together your star alignment. You were born under a particular time where this energy was just abundant, and
Mhm.
of course, not all Scorpios are the same, but
Mm.
you seem to fall into the spectrum of like very potent Scorpio energy. And it's so interesting to see how that has, manifested in this plane of existence so far. Like
Mhm.
you went from being like heavily restricted to now you're free, and you're making your own choices, and you feel so confident. You look so confident when you even mention sex or your own sexual experience. And that right there is powerful because people who are listening and watching you, they're probably feeling encouraged. You're giving them permission, like, oh, I could be a little freaky too. That's all right.
Please.
But, and it's so much more than, and I love that you bringing this up because we have this big stigma, like, for example, OnlyFans, has become a hit where it's so successful at making money. But what you're talking about is a lot different. And I'm seeing how, like, you're also in the shadow of American economy and marketing and, capitalism, and how people are selling pictures of their feet to pay their bills. But then you're offering something else, like, come out to the woods with me. Let's do like a really cool photo shoot and it'll be an experience. It's more than just
Mm,
nudity. It's empowerment, right? Like, we're human
mm,
beings, we were not born with shirts and pants on, so for
totally.
me personally, I can relate to that. As a
Totally.
baby, I was ripping my diaper off. My mother would hate that. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't want nothing touching my skin. I like being free."
Yeah.
But and it's part of our personalities, like we grow up, and that doesn't go away. It just gets stronger, like, and now here we are, midlife, so to speak. And it's like, I'm not afraid to show who I am, be who I am.
Mm,
I'm comfortable in my own skin. And that's a very powerful notion. A lot of people
mm,
wish they could feel that authentically and say that,
mm,
with utmost truth. Like, I feel comfortable in my skin. And a lot of us don't. A lot of us are
mm,
challenged. It's a miracle, honestly, in my opinion, how you've made it so far from where you came. Like, being a leader in the church, being a submissive and obedient wife in the Christian community, to now, like, I'm
mm,
free. I can breathe. And I'm so
mm,
happy for you. I wanted to make that note, because I empathize with that. I know that feeling of I can breathe now, and then especially
mhm,
when you get around people that allow you to be that, that's even more empowering.
mhm.
So right now, not to pry too much, but are you surrounding yourself with people that are also part of this journey and understand you and empower you and encourage you? Or are you pioneering some sort of community that is helping people piece themselves together? I was just curious.
Mm. I would say that for the past year and a half, I've had a lot of difficulty with being in a place. I haven't stayed put very much. And I would say that I am surrounded by people who are pursuing that sort of freedom, that sort of art like expression, that quest to tear ourselves free from the shame that is trying so hard to keep us small. But as far as like community on a regular basis, this is something that I haven't quite found my place. And I think that um I moved a lot as a kid. My dad was in the military. And then I was in Tennessee from 14 to 24, which is the longest I lived anywhere. So that's like where I say I'm from. Um, and then since being an adult, I haven't lived anywhere for longer than 15 months. And sometimes it's been in the same city, but I've just like moved almost every year. And so I'm realizing more and more like the importance of community as a like it's a verb. It's not just like the people that you're with, it's how you show up for them. And when you're constantly gone, as I am currently in Australia, which I'm here a part of a really incredible community. It was actually a lady, I was on her podcast and she was like, "Wouldn't it be cool if you could come and photograph this event?" And I was like, "Well, maybe I could." And now I'm here. And then through that, like met so many beautiful people who were like, "Oh, you can stay with me, like you could do whatever." And so then I'm like extending my trip. And so like I end up being in these pockets of community, but then like as far as like really surrounded with people on like a everyday basis, like less so. And part of that feels correct to me. I think that if I were to relate to any element, the one that is the most is wind. And I can feel like when I'm my best self, I feel like I move through a room like a breath of fresh air. And I like watch it like just like like as I pass people by or have conversations, I just like watch them like and so there's something about this sort of movement pattern that I found myself in that doesn't feel incorrect, but it does feel in alignment with my nature. But then there is also always, well, not always, but more recently has been like a little curiosity of what roots would feel like or if I would like that. So anyway, that was a very long-winded answer.
It's perfectly fine, perfectly fine. And it makes sense too, right? Like eventually along our human journey, we like to move around, we want to explore, we want to see options, we want to see the world, and then it comes a time where you're just like, I want to settle down, so to speak. I want to create like a home maybe or do something I've never done, you know.
Mhm.
And for you, it seems like you are very focused on the pleasures of the world and what it has to offer, which is beautiful. And, definitely keep that going because, we need that reminder, humans, we need that reminder that, we have this sensual or sensuality to us. And it's not always just sex, but like you were
Mm,
saying, we can find pleasures in like things that we're passionate about, you know, whether that's
mhm,
art, music,
mhm,
family, eating. I'm a foodie, so I like to eat different foods because it just strikes a certain palate for me that's like, yeah, I like that. Like this is, very unique or just calls for my taste buds, like sushi compared to Mexican food. It's something about it. In each one, there's pleasure there to be
mhm,
experienced. And it's interesting too, because in my field poetry work, I like to try to talk about sensualities through everyday things. Like God can be found in a cup of tea, or in a book, or
mhm,
in a blanket, or
mm,
in the sun,
mm,
or in a bird, or in a breeze, or in a tree. Like so it's something for me as a spiritual practice that I like to be open to seeing God not only in other things but other people.
mhm,
And that has been something of a very complicated journey because we see people, and they may hurt us, they may want to hurt us, but at the end of the day, they're not being themselves. They're being
mm,
overtaken by something, and they're out of control. So I really don't try to develop hatred towards people. People are just being people,
mhm,
and we all have free will. We all choose to be assholes or not. And we choose to be supportive or not. We choose to be sexual or not. Like these are all choices that we make. And I think it's just powerful that you chose to take control over your choices and choose to be what you believe is your best self, you know.
mm.
And that right there, that's a testimony. That's a chapter in the Bible in itself, right? Like that's sacred.
Yeah,
What
of
were
course.
you?
Yeah, you gotta do that.
Yeah,
What
you
were you
you
gonna
got to.
ask?
I was gonna say, what did you think about where you're at right now, where God has brought you, where the universe has brought you? Do you think that you went through what you went through for a greater purpose? Have you been
Mm,
able to take inventory of maybe your setbacks and traumas and see like there was lessons there for you? How much
mm.
of that has contributed to your life and journey right now to make you this amazing person who we are seeing, on screen, like, because you definitely have blossomed into a very rare flower. So what is it from your past that has contributed to this, do you think?
Well, every single thing from my past. I think that it is a superpower of ours as humans to alchemize anything into fuel. You don't need a perfect conditions or all the right circumstances or an ideal setup to be who you want to be. You just need the vision. And if you have the vision of who you want to be, then literally anything, especially the bad, I put air quotes for those who are just listening, especially the bad is the fuel that you need. I just feel like if you like whenever you slip into a state of victimhood or feeling like you don't have what you need to become who you want to become, that is a form of disempowerment. That is a form of saying I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z, rather than realizing like X, Y, and Z is exactly what you need to get there. And I don't really believe as much in like, you like have to go through something. Like I don't normally like wrap it in that narrative. Like I needed to do that necessarily as much as I'm more wrap it in the narrative that like there's nothing I can't use as fuel if I want to. And with the right framing and the right lensing and like we are master storytellers. The way that anything is sitting in your brain, anything that's sitting in your psyche is because of like the story that you have packaged it in. And the story that you have it packaged in will determine the amount of ease or dis-ease that it sits within your body. And if you have something really terrible happen and you it's like marketing. It's like you can be like, you can be a victim about it, or you can be a survivor and resilient and powerful and unable to be squashed no matter what happens. Look, I still rise and I still look good doing it. Like, it's like you can just repackage, remarket it, and that will shift how your psyche holds it.
I love that. I love how you explain that. Yes, we agree. Especially for those who are listening that is going through religious trauma or maybe separation, maybe a change in scenery and beliefs. Like this is the kind of advice that we need, right? That
Mm.
whatever you got right now is all you need. You just got to reassess and, like you're saying, alchemize it, right? Life gives me lemons, got to make lemonade. You know,
Mhm.
life gives you peaches, make something out of it. Like so
Peach cobbler.
that right, peach cobbler, right? That sounds good. Or something. But being creative, that right there is interesting,
Mm,
especially coming from your practice where you take this creative energy and then you just direct it through your lens, your
mm,
photography lens, and you create amazing images that then people can look at and say, wow, I feel better about myself. I feel different. I feel empowered. Like you gave me
mm,
permission to be a
mm.
star that I am. Sometimes we need a reminder that we are stars, and we need to burn
Totally,
bright, you know? That's
totally.
so awesome. This has been so much fun. It's just like you said, breath of fresh air. It's your energy. Thank you so much. And thank you for
Thank you.
what you do. And as we wrap up, if you could, if a client or someone was interested in being your client, how would that process look like? How can people get a hold of
Mm,
you and get in this process of liberating their bodies?
yes, I would be so honored. I obviously travel for it, so don't feel like you have to come to the Pacific Northwest. My website is where that process gets started, renmorrow.com, UREN and morrow like tomorrow. And yeah, there's an inquiry form and just let me know what you're thinking and what you're hoping we can create together. I really love concept heavy shoots or a reason to explore. I feel like the photos are always second hand to me. It's really about the experience and creating something unforgettable and unlocking a feeling within you. So then the photos just get to be a way to revisit that feeling whenever you need. So yeah, renmorrow.com. And then for inconsistent postings of my life, my travels, my musings, and sometimes my work, I'm on Instagram at underscore renmorrow.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And before we head out, I just had a thought. It's so incredible how
Mhm.
you said you were a youth pastor in the
Mhm.
church and now you're doing this work. So, how does what you learned about being a youth pastor helped you connect with people when you're doing these shoots? Like, how it seems like you have your own kind of way of making them feel comfortable to some extent.
Mhm.
And of course, no one is exactly the same. So obviously, you don't have like one set technique, but maybe there's a thought process behind how do you help people get comfortable to do this event, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I think the reason I was called to be the youth pastor and the reason I have done this type of work is this combination of just I'm really good at just being present with people and reading them. You think that for every person, feeling comfortable is gonna, like you said, it's gonna feel different. Laughter, always. And then I watch somebody go through the process of what looks like blooming to me. And you see a little bud and then you start to see it like starts to open a little bit and you just am a little fairy that sings the song to like make the flower bloom. Like it just so I just as I watch that happen, I don't exactly know what will make it happen, but I know it when I see it, and I love to, like, encourage it and, like, kind of pull it up and out and through, and so, yeah, just really watching someone.
Thank you. I figured it, but I wanted to hear you say it. That sounds divine. Thank you so much for that. Wow. So it's not just a regular photo shoot. This is something so much more, people. This is beyond that. And that's awesome. So anyone listening, please give her a chance, give her a shot, try to
Mm,
experience a photo shoot with her or a session with her and see where that takes you. It's so brilliant and beautiful when you deal with authentic people. You know that
mm,
your money is well invested. So that's
thank
awesome. Did
you.
you have any final or closing thoughts? Maybe things you want to say, leave for the audience to think about
Mm,
before we wrap out?
mm, hmm. I would just encourage you to be attentive to your own blooming when it comes to trying to figure out what you need for your life, where you want to go, who you want to spend time with, what type of work you want to do, kind of, the way we spend our time is so important. And so being attentive to your own little heart for the things that make it seem like it goes from a flower that's budding to blooming. And if you pay attention to that, then reorienting as often as possible to give it the conditions it needs.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thinking about starting a podcast but don't know where to begin? Do you want to improve the quality of your podcast? Struggling with podcast editing and post production? Want to enhance your podcast's storytelling? Ready to take your podcast to the next level? Discover how Lost Raven Studios podcast consulting can walk with you. Visit our website and schedule a free consultation.